Hello, hello. This video is my attempt to really boil down all of the different types of roles that you can make in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition to just their very basics, and to explain what they are and why we do them. In front of you, you'll notice that I have my character sheet for my Halfling Cleric. This is when we were level 3, so it's not very far along. And you'll notice on the other side, on the dry erase, that I've labeled a couple of different sections for you, and those are the sections that we're really going to talk about. The player's handbook describes what you can do in Dungeons and Dragons in 3 basic packages. Saving throws, skill checks, and magic spells. And we will talk about all of those today. So the first thing that I want to point out is the saving throws versus skill checks. This is one that even players who have been playing for years sometimes just still can't quite grasp. It's a little bit confusing. Here's my attempt to clarify what that is. So saving throws are these right here in this little box. You'll see labeled there. And skill checks, you would use stuff in these boxes, as well as any of this in your proficiencies, which we will talk about. The difference between those two things is skill check is I want to do something. I want to try to do an action. So I will make a skill check roll to try to accomplish that action. For example, if I am a bard and I want to try to impress the crowd at the local tavern with my amazing harmonica skills, then I would probably make a performance check. Of course, these checks are dependent on the GM. They can ask you whatever they want to ask you for that skill roll. But that would generally be a performance check. So you would find your performance skill, which on here, this cleric is not very charismatic. So the performance is a -1. Not good. So I would roll my die and hope that it was good, because I'd have to -1 off of that roll. That's a 16. That's not bad. So that I would have a 15 altogether on that particular roll. To impress the crowd. A 15 might be good enough to impress a pretty average tavern crowd. It's not going to be like the royal court or anything, you know. So that's a fair performance. That's a pretty solid, decent performance. And that's what a skill check will always be for, is to just do a thing. Whatever thing that you want to try to do in a game, you roll a die and add something to it to see if you succeed. One of the interesting things about skill checks that sometimes I feel like we underutilize in Dungeons and Dragons, at least with 5th edition, is that this little list right here is not the only list of things that you can do in the entire game. And that's not even just me saying, oh, you should be flexible and make up whatever you want. Like, you can be flexible and make up things if you want. But there's also rules as written aspects of this game that aren't included in this small box. This is not all there is. And one of those things is your proficiencies down here. Now you will notice on my particular character sheet, I'm not proficient at any tools or any musical instruments or anything like that, but other characters are. If you have a bard, for example, they're going to be proficient at a certain number of instruments. If you have a tinkerer, they're probably going to be proficient at some kind of set of tools. I have a barbarian whose background is shipbuilder, and as a shipbuilder, they're proficient in carpentry tools. And the way that you use those carpentry tools is not in this box. There's not a skill that says carpentry. But you can, as a GM, look at what they're trying to accomplish and decide first which basic stat it's going to be based off of, which are these here. So if I'm trying to do something that involves complex mathematics with my carpentry skills, for example, to build some kind of trap, the GM might have me base it on my intelligence skill, which for that barbarian, the intelligence is 14, so that would be a +2. And then, since I have proficiency here in my carpenter's tools, I would also add my proficiency bonus, which is found right here. So to roll a carpentry roll, I would add proficiency plus my intelligence, and then see what happens on that particular project. You could also do it with dexterity. If I was trying to whittle something very tiny and just have it look like artistically beautiful, the GM might have me roll it based on dexterity instead to see if I can just make those little tiny knives do what I want them to do. So I would add my dexterity plus my proficiency in order to accomplish that skill. That's the same way that you roll lock-picking skills when you have thieves' tools. That's the same way you roll herbalism kit skills if you're proficient in herbalism. That's how all of the tool proficiencies will function in D&D 5th edition. Along with that, you also have the opportunity of changing what any of these basic skills are based off of. For example, I see here that medicine is normally a wisdom check, and that's because it's a very nature biology related thing, and wisdom is usually something that you would be high in if you're a druid or a cleric who does a lot of divine magic and sort of one with the earth kind of a thing. But there are situations where if you have perhaps studied something very specific about the biology of the creature that you're trying to do a medicine check on, if you were a wizard and you have studied a lot of kobolds and you're trying to heal a kobold with a medicine check, the GM could very easily have you roll an intelligence-based medicine check instead of a wisdom-based medicine check. And that would account for being able to draw on that particular kind of knowledge. And you are able to do that with any of those kinds of skill checks. It's really not hard and fast limited to just this one list in this box. If your characters, if your players are trying to do something that you don't feel quite fits with what's in the box, you can just have them roll based on a basic stat. Say, okay, give me a dexterity roll. I'll let you add your proficiency because this is a thing you've done before. Or give me a dexterity roll but no proficiency because you have no idea what you're doing, but we'll see what happens. You can do any of that kind of thing in Dungeons & Dragons. It allows you to, expand your horizons way beyond what's in that one little box. Now, aside from skill checks, another thing you can do is saving throws. And saving throws are, instead of when you want to do something, it's when somebody wants to do a thing to you. Saving throws are basically like a dodge reaction. If you've ever played a different system, like GURPS, for example, somebody can't hit you if you roll dodge and succeed. It's a very similar principle to that. A saving throw will happen if a spell has been cast on you or if a trap has been set off and you are trying to not get affected by that thing that is happening to you. A really popular example is a fireball. If you throw a fireball into an area, everybody in that area will need to make a dexterity saving throw. So they would roll the dice and then add this number to that die. And they have to succeed against a certain number, or else they will take full damage from that fireball. If they do succeed, they will only take half damage from that fireball. So they don't get out of the way completely if they succeed on their dex save. But it helps significantly, especially when fireballs are involved, because that's, 8d6? It's something pretty crazy, and if you're a low level, you do not want to get hit by that. So success at your dex save is the best thing in that situation. There are a lot of illusion spells and mind control spells that will require you to make a wisdom saving throw, which is this one here. And that's equivalent to your will, basically, your mental ability to shove off an intrusive piece of magic. A really good example for that is Hold Person, I believe, is a wisdom saving throw. So if you don't want to get paralyzed in the middle of battle and be stuck there not moving, you need to succeed at your wisdom save in order to shove off the effects of that. And the difference between the saving throw and the skill check is that the skill check is the thing that you want to do to interact with the world, and a saving throw is a thing you do when something else is trying to interact with you. Now, the saving throw, we talked about having to beat a certain number in order to be able to succeed at that saving throw. So, for example, my wisdom in this character is +5 for that saving throw, so I would take a die and see what I rolled on it. I rolled a 2. That's very bad. +5 is a 7. That's not going to beat anybody's DC. But how you can find that out is on the second sheet of the character sheet, which is your spells. Now, you'll notice, let me scooch this over a little. You'll notice that there are some boxes up here at the top of the character sheet. You have your spell attack bonus, +5, and your spell save DC bonus, 13. These correspond to this. So, spell attack bonus is your spell skill check. When I want to cast a spell and do something to somebody else, I will cast Firebolt, for example. That's a cantrip that requires an attack roll spell. So I would roll my die, and I would add that +5 to see if I hit somebody. And I would match that up against the armor class, which you can see right here, to see if I hit them. Now, on the other hand, if I wanted to cast a fireball, and I wanted to see if they could make a dexterity save throw against my fireball, they would be rolling against this number here. That corresponds with the saving throw. So anybody who is trying to avoid a fireball that this person cast would have to roll higher than a 13 in order to succeed. Well, 13 or higher, because meets beats in D&D. And that's where those come in. For example, here, this Sacred Flame is a saving throw spell. So instead of me attacking and using this number, I attack them, and they have to make a saving throw against this number in order to see if they take any damage. And those are, they feel a little bit complicated sometimes, but the spell descriptions will always tell you exactly what that particular spell does and how it functions. I'll give you a really basic example using one that we've already talked about, Sacred Flame. You can see on this card that it describes the target must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or take 1d8 radiant damage. And so it tells you exactly what you have to do. It tells you the other person has to roll against your number, and if they roll, this is what happens. And that's how they work. That's the basic 3 things that you can do in Dungeons & Dragons. Skill check, when you want to do a thing. Saving throw, when you want to stop a thing happening to you. And spells, where you do the same. Spell attack bonus when you want to do a thing. And spell save DC when they're trying to stop it from happening. And that's the summary of everything that you can do in D&D, basically.